If you remember the registration form that you filled, we did share that the day one is going to be about just exploring tools. And tomorrow we will jump into analysis and we have some activities planned for you all as well, where you all will get a chance to do some analysis on your own. But, but we can save it for tomorrow. And today we'll just go through all the tools. Yeah, let's get started with day one. So, how did we develop NEAF? Um, we developed NEAF because we wanted to understand the impact of our nature education programs. So, through informal, formal conversations that we would have in office or we would have with our other colleagues in this nature education space, we realized that assessments is something that everybody talks about, but we don't really know, okay, how exactly should we assess? And sometimes there are questions which pop into our minds about, okay, are our nature education programs actually impactful? Are they actually able to achieve the goals that we set out for to achieve or not? So it becomes all about, is your work really working? And that's the reason why we need assessments to actually know about, okay, maybe something's working, maybe something's not. So we need assessments, not just to tell us about the immediate and long-term effectiveness about our programs, but also to inform us about the areas where we might need some improvements. Because not all learners are the same, not all learners perceive things the same way. So you do need to know, okay, maybe some things did not work out, I should have done something differently. But how will you know that? And that's where assessments come into picture. And I'm pretty sure all of you think similarly, and that's why we are all here today to discuss about assessments and NEAF. And also, there are some limitations that we realize do exist in this space. So we did not just directly jump onto putting NEAF together. We first thought of looking out for maybe tools which are already there. And one thing that we noticed was the tools which are already there, most of them are either focusing only on knowledge. So, what's the difference between a conventional assessment where a child is made to sit into an exam hall and given a test paper and you're just assessed for okay whether you know something or not, and what we're trying to do in this space, we when we conduct the nature education program, it taps upon areas other than knowledge as well. And some of you all, and most all of you all already mentioned things like, attitudes, behaviors, um, perceptions, and all of that. Now, it becomes tough to measure at in a conventional assessment. And hence, we thought of why not give it a shot and make NEAF. Another thing that we realized is most of the scales and tools, some beautiful ones for that matter, do exist, but they are all rooted in global north. And India as a country works in completely different socio-ecological settings. And some tool which is probably developed in the global north will not really be able to capture that impact that it's set out to in the context like India. So we wanted to make contextual tools, tools which can be adapted as well, because even within India, the socio-ecological conditions differ drastically from geography to geography. And we wanted to have something in place which is adaptable, which you can just pick up and, just tweak it to fit your needs. And that's again where NEAF came into play. Above all, we wanted to make a practitioner friendly toolkit. So when we were on this search of, looking at different tools and different scales which are existing, we did come across some really good work done by the Paluid team and the team at CWS, where they tried to, look at, assess their nature education programs. And I think it only inspired us to try to build something which can be picked up by other practitioners as well. And you don't have to, sit and kind of think from scratch about how you can actually do assessments. You have a guide or you have a toolkit which you can refer to, adapt from, and tweak to fit your own needs and context. And that's how we thought of developing NEAF. So, to summarize what I just said, what exactly is NEAF? It is a toolkit which is meant for nature educators, which is meant for nature educators to be able to use it in a very easy to use kind of a way, and assess the effectiveness of their nature education interventions by tapping onto knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors. There are some areas which are really difficult to measure, and behavior is one of them. But what we try to do through NEAF is at least get an insight into what the behavior leaning might be like. And we do this by through a set of qualitative and quantitative tools, some of which you already mentioned in the Menti, which we have tried to experiment with as well. Um, and yeah, you do it in a post assessment, pre assessment kind of a way. And yeah, there you have it. So I would also want to talk a little bit about how the journey was to develop NEAF. We tried to follow a very iterative process, and it was a five-step process which kind of kept moving in circles. So we started off with literature review and educator conversations. We wanted to get a good insight about how the assessment scene kind of is in the nature education space and hear from educators because somewhere we did not want to bring our own personal biases as well into play, and we wanted to have as many perspectives from practitioners in the space as we could. Um, so we spoke to a lot of nature educators, looked at a lot of research and literature which was published in the global north in India, and kind of get some insights and inspirations, and even brainstorm a little bit with the educators we spoke to. So that was how the initial couple of months of this whole project looked like, of this 2 year project. And then we actually sat on, started designing and developing tools. So some of the, I'll get into how we designed and developed the tools in detail in the coming slides. But we took inspirations again, we co-developed, we created some of our own from our own experiences, and we had a set of tools ready. Now, what do we do with these tools? We wanted to see if they actually work and they are actually able to capture the impact that we, visualize them to in some sense. So we conducted field trials. Now, as nature classrooms, we generally work with educator groups, but we also wanted to develop tools for those who work with students. And for that, we collaborated with different organizations in India. We collaborated with Earth Focus Foundation in Ghana. There were some independent educators in Gujarat and in other states of the country as well. And we asked them to, okay, with them, we kind of trialed some of our tools and realized what works, what doesn't. There were some collaborators like Ticket Tales with whom we tried to develop some tools and trial in their spaces as well. Now, trialing tools gave us a lot of feedback and insight about what could work, what couldn't work. And we took all of those reflections and incorporated them in our framework. So this was a stage where we were just welcoming reflections, insights, and even suggestions, comments, thoughts, everything. And feedback became of a core value for us, and it is at the core of NEAF. So we took that feedback, and like I said, it's an iterative process. We went back to designing the tools and then again trialed them and again looked for feedback. And that cycle went on for quite a while. And once it was, we felt like, okay, we do know some things that work, that don't, and what don't. We took all of it and we put it in the framework. And then that framework went through a process of review and refinement through our collaborators, through our team. And now it is out there for everyone to use. So the iterative process was what kind of molded NEAF and charted out the journey for development and trialing of NEAF. And here it is. It's welcome to feedback and review from all of you. I hope you all got the chance to go through NEAF. And like Priyanka mentioned in the norm setting, please have it handy. We will need it for the next part of the workshop. In the meanwhile, like I said, I'll reflect a little bit on development of tools. So, a few key ways that we um, thought worked out for us during this developing the tools journey. The tools were heavily research inspired. So, we looked at a lot of research done on how children connect with nature. Some of our own research projects that we had done, like the Children and Nature in the City and the SCL work that Priyanka mentioned. And we tried to seek inspiration from it and we tried to develop some tools. So here's a snippet of one of the tools called Stories and Memories about nature. So this tool is inspired from all the work done on geographies and how they influence to a relationship between children and nature, and how memories and nostalgia also plays a role in your perceptions and your relationship with nature. And so this was one way. Then we tried to have multi-dimensional tools because we wanted to see how many aspects can we capture from one tool itself. And here's a snippet of the tool called Feelings Towards Nature. So this tool kind of gives us insights into the attitudes and the perceptions, and also knowledge and ecological awareness, and a little bit of behavioral leanings as well. So we wanted to have something fun for kids to use, which doesn't become too overwhelming for them as well. But it gives you a lot of information from just, implementing it. Then there were adapted tools. So here we looked at some of the scales that I mentioned we came across, but they were rooted not in India. So this one scale is called Inclusion of Self in Nature, and we adapted it to kind of fit the kind of insights that we were getting during the trials. Like we realized that in a country where the socio-ecological conditions are such that there may be some kids who are living really close to nature, but there may be some who are completely disconnected from nature. Accessibility becomes influencing factor. So we tried to adapt it in such a way that it not only tells us about the emotional closeness one shares with nature, but also the physical proximity with nature. So yeah, I'll talk more about all these tools in the latter section today when we get to it. And then there were some tools which we co-developed with our collaborators. So some areas where we felt like, okay, maybe they bring some kind of expertise with, we thought of, okay, why not incorporate that and something of our own and build a tool together. So this is a snippet from the nature stewardship tool, which we co-developed with Ticket Tales. And then free field trial of tools. So if you all have gone through NEAF by now, you would have realized that we have tools for nature educators who work with students, for nature educators who work with teachers, educators, or adult groups, and for nature educators to assess themselves. So basically, the self-assessment set of tools. So of course, we were not able to trial all the tools in one geography or in just in collaboration with just one nature educator or an organization. So we collaborated with people across spaces, and some through our own workshops with teachers. We trialed our tools for educators, and some with those who predominantly work with students and children. We tried the tools which were for educators working with students, and some collaborators very willingly took up the self-assessment toolkit, and they were like, okay, we want to assess ourselves too. So NEAF has kind of gone through a lot of field trialing, as you can see from the map here. And now when I'm talking about this iterative process, here's a demonstration about what I actually mean by it. So this was probably not the first version, but one of the initial versions of the Feelings Towards Nature toolkit. And as you can see, it's just asking you, okay, how do you feel? And pick up why do you feel this way. But when we actually trialed it on field, we realized that, okay, kids have a lot more reasoning to responding in a certain way than just why they're feeling that way. We realized that the kids were becoming very expressive about their emotions, firstly, but also they were sharing insights or anecdotes about, okay, hey, I've seen this animal somewhere. Uh, for those of you who might not be aware, when we use this tool, we show children a set of pictures or videos, and we ask them to respond um, by selecting an emoticon, whatever best fits their emotion that picture kind of um, expects them expects from them. So we realized that the kids started sharing about their insights of actually seeing it, and they were like, "Okay, this came in front of me. I'll do this," and stuff like that. And then we were like, "Hey, this is important insight. Why not incorporate it?" So we did an iteration, and we trialed it this way, where we were asking them, "Okay, what is this? Have you seen it before? What would you do if you see it? And do you think if it's an important part of the world around you?" So, as far as capturing information or attitudes and knowledge and behavioral leanings, we realized this tool was able to do it. But the field trials not only gave us insights into, okay, is it able to capture things or not, but it also gave us insights into, okay, maybe this format is not working. And we realized that probably because of the way it was designed, the kids, very young kids, were not able to read it well. And then we realized, okay, it needs one more iteration. And the next round of trial that we did, we kind of tweaked it further. And so far, we have realized this current format works the best, where you are streamlining the questions and you have a key, and you have boxed off the responses. So far, it's been working, and that's the reason why it has found a place in NEAF. So this was just one of the examples, but all our tools kind of went through this process. Some tools that we set out to include in NEAF were not included because they were not able to capture some things as well. And some were just developed during the trials, which we had not even intended to probably in the first place. So that's about the iterative development process of NEAF. Um, and I think I've spoken quite a lot at stretch. So would you want to share any questions or thoughts that you have in mind about the process of how NEAF was formed? Or just if you want to share something?
Um, if it is convenient for everyone, we'll request you to raise your hand so that we can take turns in selecting people who can share their questions or thoughts. So if you do have a question or any thought to share, please raise your hand and we can ask you to unmute. Yes, please go ahead, Tajmal.
So I have one question, not question, I can say a thought. You have gone through so many trials, like then going back to the questions, then like coming and like saying this is not working and coming back, and sometimes you get out of like question like now what can we add kind of thing. Like so, how do you process that whole thing?
Okay, at some points, I did feel like, okay, maybe some things are not working out. There were a lot of questions of positionality also, which kind of did arise during this process about, um, am I looking at things differently? Am I bringing my personal biases also to the table? That was also something that did come to my mind. And is that the reason why you know, the students or the educators are not responding to the tools the way I imagined them to? But I think along with just going and trialing the framework out or trialing tools from the framework out, there was a lot of background interactions also which happened with the children about, okay, where I tried to, ask them questions about the thing that was being displayed. Let's say, for example, some photograph was being displayed. I tried to ask them that, hey, are you not interested in this? Or are you not understanding? And kids were very prompt responding to these things. They were like, no, actually, I want to talk about it, but I don't have that much space to write. So there were things like that. Or some of them, I'll share an instance where we tried a particular tool in a space and we realized that the kids were not at all engaging with it. But later conversations with their teachers made us realize that most of the kids were first generation formal education learners, and because of which they were finding it difficult to grasp things like reading and writing and all of it. And that made us, that did at some point make me feel like, okay, well, why are we doing this? But then it also led to other discussions with our collaborators, and I would probably want to say that it was having the support from the community, which also made us want to keep trialing tools, keep developing them, because there was interest which was shared from them as well about, okay, maybe this tool doesn't work this way. Let's try to follow it or try to implement it in a different way altogether. And then we try to make a game out of it, which I will talk about because that tool did make to NEAF at some point later. So yes, there was exhaustion. I mean, we are all human at the end of the day, but it was also the kind of interest that was there, and you could see that children are bringing stories with them, which probably some tool is not able to capture. And then we wanted to make it capture because it was interesting insights to know as an educator end of the day. So I hope that answers your question. But yes, Ananya.
I don't know if you already mentioned this. I think I didn't catch it. If what was your criteria in that you based on which you chose the tools to review in all of this?
Uh, okay, so about that, we did have some criteria in place. Like, for example, the questions were framed in a way uh, with uh, with the idea that they will give us insights into the knowledge or tell us about attitudes. And like I said, that the tool development process, it was research inspired. Some of it was adapted, some of it was co-developed, and we tried multidimensional tools also. So since it was based on some research, we kind of did try to incorporate that in the tool in the sense, if we knew that, okay, somebody had done it in a certain way, we kind of tried to tweak it and make it fit in the context. Or we just framed the question and just tried it out. But what was interesting was sometimes it did um, work out in the way we had intended it to. Like, for example, I might have asked a question in the tool, which I probably included thinking that, okay, it will tap on knowledge. But the way the students interpreted it, I realized that there were about attitudes also coming into picture or perceptions coming into picture. So, I don't know if this answers your question, but the criteria was to make tools which will be able to bring out all the baseline information, all the baseline experiences that children come with, or educators come with, because we have tools for educators and teachers as well, their own personal experiences, their own personal biases, which we probably couldn't even, put under a label or in a box. So we wanted to bring those out of box experiences and information and knowledge into picture through our tools. So there were some which had a criteria, and those were kind of tools which looked at quantitative responses, you can say close-ended responses. But there were a lot of tools which were very open-ended. Like we just wanted stories to come out through the tool. And that really didn't have a criteria. We kind of kept the space open. And if I'm not able to answer the question now, I hope when we actually run through the tools, we get some idea about what we actually did. So yeah, that's all
Could
I
I
can say.
add a quick response as well? Ananya, also, please make sure you read the reference section in the document. So that will also give you a sense of, what peer-reviewed papers we looked at. And also organizations like Paluyir and CWS have also created their own tools. So we referred to those documents as well before we started our own research and conversations with nature educators. Tajamul, also a quick response to your question. As we were developing NEAF, a lot of nature educators were giving us feedback that they're really looking forward to this toolkit and framework, and that it would be something that will be really useful for them, because many of them were finding just thinking about assessments, challenging, including things like time, or even getting a little worried about how will they actually analyze the responses. So we wanted to make sure that it's practitioner friendly, like Tanaya has been saying from the beginning. And so it was also a responsibility on our plate that we had to make sure that the tools that we were designing and putting out there were actually working. We didn't want it to just be a theoretical exercise, right? And so therefore, it had to go through an iterative process. It had to go through a lot of trials and then review. Right. So yes, it was exhausting, but it was important and necessary as well. Yeah, we have Vaikunt, whose hand is up. Tanaya, do you want to take this question now, or how are we with time?
We do have some time for that.
Okay, Vaikunt.
Oh yeah. Yes, I have one question. Like since you mentioned about implementing and testing the process, I would like to know the children's age group which has been looked for, because I think somehow I missed that portion, and I would like to know, is there any specific early years in the earlier settings you've tried and tested this framework and the assessment? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, age plays an important component when you are trialing out a tool, and taking that into account, if you look at the framework, and we will discuss it in a while, no doubt. We have tools for different age groups. There are some which can go across all age groups, but there are some which are for specific audiences. So about the trials that I did, I personally was a part of a few trials which ranged from grade 3 to grade 7. But I have mentioned, we had collaborators who picked up some of the tools and the framework and they tried it in their spaces as well. There were some who went beyond grade 7, beyond, and I think grade 8 as grade 9 as well. Early years, I don't think we do have tools which are really targeting really young kids, but I think age 6, age 7, 8 plus, yes.
Thank you.
So my question was same like the last question only, and I missed the response. So I probably will like check out the YouTube video for the response. Basically, like we are working with fifth class students, and I was wondering like if this framework is applicable to fifth class students, fifth grade students.
Yes, in fact, that was one age group which was recurring in most of our trials. So yes, it does work with grade students.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Narayanan, do we have time for one more question, Tanaya? And there are also a few questions in the chat, which maybe we can take in the next segment. But maybe we can take one question from Narayanan.
Yeah, hey, good morning, all. Thanks for the session. So, is this anything specific to the platform, such as these trials, or the trials that you conducted and applying the feedbacks, right? Or what is a platform, or is it anything specific platform, such as formal institutions or an individual groups outside informal education, or it's just a kind of a walk or a meetup sessions kind of? I just want to know that. Thank you.
Okay, again, I don't know if this will answer your question, but we reached out to nature educators who worked in different contexts, different geographies. So some of the nature educators we reached out to, they have programs going on in which are a part of formal school institutions. So as an after-school club or just like a preschool session activity kind of a thing. So these educators engaged with the government school students in this capacity. So that was one of our trial groups. Then we had nature educators who conducted summer programs for some schools. So that was a trial group. Then we had some independent nature educators who were working with learning spaces, which where students after school would come to a particular space and learn. So that was a space. That was a space where we collaborated. Similarly, there were some who would work in like tuition centers. So we worked with nature educators who were working with those group of students. Then there were some alternate learning spaces as well. We collaborated with nature educators who worked there. So our contexts differed from geography to geography as well. And also in the form of the learning institutions that the students were going to, where this nature educator was working. So it has been trialed in different settings. And that's about the students part of it. We also have tools for nature educators who are working with school teachers. So like they conduct training programs for school teachers about how they can, bring nature into their learning. So that we collaborated with organizations which work with school teachers, which work with government school teachers. Yeah, so it's different contexts. So it's a long document. I'm not going to bore you all while going to each and every page. I'll just jump to some sections which I feel we either have covered or we will be covering in the coming days. The rest of it you can take a look at in your own space and time. So if you can just come to the index page, feel free to either look at NEAF on your phones, or I'm sharing it on my screen as well, whatever's convenient for you. So we do have a glossary to start off with, where we are trying to describe some of the recurring terminologies which we would have used in NEAF, and also some which we probably might interpret or define differently than in the conventional sense. So all of it you can find in the glossary. It would be great if you could familiarize yourself with it, because maybe not for today's session as much, it might help us for tomorrow's. So that can be kind of a homework for you to go through. The overview and introduction part of it, I kind of tried to touch upon during the section that we just did. But if you want deeper insights, like Vena said, if you want to go through the references of literature that we referred to, and learn more in detail about the challenges that we faced, challenges that assessing nature education in practice faces, the gaps that we identified, and just a brief, more detailed sort of introduction about what NEAF is, what the design and structure of NEAF looks like, and how we are making it a practitioner-led framework. You can go through the introduction. What I actually want to speak more in detail about is getting started with NEAF. Apologies if the screen lags a bit. It's just a heavy file, so it might. Okay, great. So this is probably an important section for you to take a look at, especially if you are planning on using NEAF. It covers some brief baseline info and gives you some insights about some things that you need to take into consideration before you actually start using NEAF. So it talks about how one should approach, and talks about the broad three sets of tools that we offer. So if you're an educator working with students, if you're an educator working with teachers and educators, and if you just want to reflect upon your own practice, what would be the best section to go to? That's what it talks about. It also goes on to talk in detail about what NEAF exactly is. So NEAF is meant to be a flexible assessment framework for nature education. It is meant to be adaptable, and you can be make your own tools inspired from NEAF, or probably adapt the existing tools in NEAF into your context and your settings. It is designed to support reflection, understanding, and learning. So NEAF is not about scoring. NEAF is not about giving grades to your students. It is more about how somebody mentioned in the Menti. It's about eyes and ears. So it's about seeing your students more closely, seeing where they are coming from, and reflecting and understanding what upon what they have to share. So it's majorly built on that. And yes, it expects you to be attentive to emotions, perceptions, and lived experiences. So if you're open to that and you want to encourage that, then NEAF is for you. And like I said before, it's adaptable across different ages, different contexts, and different program types. Something that we even realized when we were trialing it in different contexts. And NEAF is meant to be used thoughtfully and responsively. So it's encouraging people to tell their stories, express where they're coming from more meaningfully, and works around that more than expecting somebody to, answer things in a very standardized way. While we're talking about what NEAF is, this section also talks about what NEAF is not. So it's not a graded test. It's not a tool for judging or ranking learners. And it's not a tool which gives you a fixed or rigid set of instructions. You don't have to follow everything to the key. And that is what makes NEAF so adaptable in some sense. So if you're going for a graded test, if you are looking for something which will help you rank your learners, then I'm sorry, but NEAF might not be the best tool to go ahead with. So yeah, if NEAF works for you, then how can you actually use it? So this section also talks about a 5-step process that you as an educator need to kind of follow when you're picking up this toolkit. So firstly, know your group. Do you work with students? Do you work with educators and teachers? Or do you just want something to assess your own self? Once you know that, then go to that section And each section comes with facilitator notes, which I would nudge you to, take a really good look at before you can move on to the next step. Because these facilitator notes, they not only offer you suggestions about how you can, implement that tool, but it also gives you some reminders, and some reminders not maybe some tiny things that we tend to forget. Some things just like listen to your students, listen to your learner groups. So it offers reminders like that, and some considerations also for you to keep in mind. So how should you use NEAF in a way that doesn't seem too intimidating for your learner group, or doesn't seem too intrusive as well? So the facilitator notes offer that. So maybe not don't read it once, read it twice, and then move on to the next part, which is choosing the tools that actually fit your context. I'm assuming that most of you here, if you are a nature educator or a education practitioner, you're working with students. So I would probably just go ahead with that assumption. But if you're not, then please put in the chat box, or please let us know. Because we do have tools for educators, which I can do a quick run through if you want, which are basically more adult audiences. So yeah, as far as tools for students goes, we have 10 tools, but you don't have to use all 10. You can pick up what fits your context, because again, you don't want to overwhelm your learners with a set of 10 tools. So look at all the tools. There's a tool selection guide at the start of the student tool section. So look at the name of the tools, look at the age group, look at the kind of time and logistical amenities you as an educator can offer as well, because those are some things that we do need to take into account. Do you have that kind of time to invest in padding of the tool or not? Will kind of influence how effectively the tool can be used. So take that into account as well. And with time, it also means whether it's a pre-test or a post-test. And the activity types. We have different activity types, and I'll speak more about that when we actually get onto the tools. Let's just go through NEAT first, and what it helps explore as well. So what it helps explore is generally knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors. So these are the three arms of, you can say this education practice in general, and we try to follow that when we are looking at nature education as well, and hence it's there. And then what do you do with these tools? Obviously, the expectation on you is not to use it just the way it has been presented there. Adapt it. Adapting it is very important. It can determine the way the tool is able to actually measure things. So the tools will be outlining what they're exploring, who they're designed for, how can they be used, and how can they be adapted. We have given some suggestions for how can they be adapted as well. And let me just do the last part, and then we'll see that. Fifth step is the most important of all. Where you are just expected to pause, reflect, and make meaning. Because the tools are so open-ended, your responses may tend to be all over the place. So you just have, but every response is important. Know that, and then pause and take a moment to just reflect on those responses, and then try to make meaning out of it. Again, suggestions for that are provided with every tool as well. So yeah, once we are done with this, I would want to move to the, next part, where we have some caveats for you to remember before you actually start using NEAF. And these are more like personal notes for facilitator based on our experiences, what we faced during trials, and how we can probably make the process a little more easier and convenient for you. So we are offering NEAF as a tool which is meant to be supportive. It's meant to be flexible for your work. And yeah, some reminders like that for you to just keep in mind, keep it at the back of your head when you're using tools. So that's about it. And now coming to the actual tool section. So here as well, we have some blurb for you to just read through, some things that you need to notice and keep an account of. So we don't want the focus to only be on knowledge, because like you'll remember, it was one of the limitations that we had in fact mentioned. We want to go beyond knowledge. We want to look at attitudes. We want to look at behaviors, and possibly all the things that you all mentioned in the Menti as well that should be measured. And that's what we are trying to do. So maybe don't approach it as something that is measuring knowledge. And look at whether you want to use it for pre-assessment or post-assessment. Some tools are only for pre-assessment, some are for both. So make a note of that. If you are having a longish engagement with your learner group, then you can also do a post test, which is basically a retention test. And you can also do a midpoint test. So it depends upon what works for you. Midpoint assessment will be more preferred if you are in a longer engagement, just to kind of take a check of where your learners are at right now before you can proceed ahead. So, yeah, that's about it. And we followed a mixed methods approach. So we have a mix of qualitative and quantitative methods. And qualitative methods make room for a lot more areas to be explored. And there are studies which have proven that a mixed method approach works the best because you are not restricting the thinking of the learner who's attempting it. You're kind of giving them an open space to explore other areas as well, and to share their ideas and thoughts in a better way. So that, and who are the tools for? I think I have repeated it multiple times before as well. If you're an educator working with students, if you're an educator working with teachers, educators for self-assessment. So pick that and go to the next section. So this is about assessing nature learning among students. And I might want you all to probably just be with me through this section, because the tools do follow a particular template, and I would want to take this moment to just go through that, run you through that. So again, here as well, there's a note for facilitators, which, like I mentioned, is something that you should probably read twice just to, have it there at the back of your mind. So it's basically be conscious about the context and age, select and use the tools that you as an educator find appropriate, and some tools do need pre-briefings or demos. So we have warm-up suggested for that. And be flexible because use the tools in the way that best fits you. And data is not only in answers. So keep your eyes and ears open again. Watch for body language, watch for group dynamics. Sometimes even the excitement or the hesitation that you can see a child might face to attempt something might tell you a lot. It might tell you about their perceptions, or it might also tell you about their comfort levels, and that might be a sign for you to probably switch the way you're implementing a tool. So yeah, sometimes what's not said reveals as much as what is what we believe, and that's something that we have tried to stay consistent with through all our tools. So this is a tool selection guide that I spoke about. Don't have to look at it right now. I'll just come to it when we are actually jumping into all the tools. This is the template that I wanted you to just be a little more mindful about, because it will help you read the tools when you're later going through it. So yeah, I hope it's visible to everyone. We have a tool name at the start, and what is the assessment type and when to use it is what follows. So is it for pre-assessment? Is it for post-assessment? Is it for both? Maybe do a check of that first before you can actually pick the tool, and just see where you are at in the timeline of your nature education program. And then age group that the tool can be used for. Not all tools can be used for all ages. And then the time required to use each tool. See, as an educator, if you actually have that kind of time first on your plate, because we did have some collaborators who told us that some tools what they were not able to use because the time that they had was really limited, and the tool would have probably taken up most of their time that day. So some tools are very quick. Some tools, because they are deeply reflective, they require more time. So be mindful of that, and where a tool can be used. So basically the setting, while most of the tools can be used indoors, there are some which can be used in an outdoor setting as well. So that, and obviously if you want to, as an educator, tweak it a bit based on the kind of energy that your learner group has, you can take a call depending on that as well. Or think of some creative ways which we probably wouldn't have considered when we were putting this tool in place. And then the activity type. So most of our activities are either written, verbal, and drawing based, and then there are some game based as well. So there are some tools which mainly look at return responses, but we have had a variation where we have changed it to an interview, and we realized that the interview offer a lot more. So we have either suggested those variations or given options on how you can change the activity type as well. So it's kind of open. And what do we mean? What do we aim to assess through the tool? So again, here we will cover, does it assess knowledge? Does it assess attitude? Does it assess behavior? Or does it assess something else as well, which is probably unique to just that tool? And then materials required. Again, this is something for you as an educator to be mindful of. Do your students have those resources already? Or you can probably provide them, or you might have to ask them to carry it with them, something that's just like a prerequisite. And yeah, there is an indication here on top for the tool number and the intended users as well. Majorly because there are a lot of tools, so when you're flipping through them, it might somewhere aid you to see where you are at. Because some of our tools are pretty long because we have included some analysis in it as well. So purpose and overview gives you a glimpse of why we have this tool and what it is looking at. And then there are warm-ups suggested. So what we realized during our field trials was sometimes icebreakers and warm-ups do help not only to get the learners comfortable with you, but also because some tools require some explanation. Like we have some tools with a thumbs up, thumbs down activity. So gives you a context. So uh, that is what the warm up suggests. And I'll talk about it a little more when we actually go through the tools because it might mean differently for every tool. And then there's a main activity. There are notes for a facilitator to use and keep in mind when you're using the tool. These facilitation notes are put together based on our experiences, based on some things we felt or realized on the field, and we felt that okay, maybe next time we should be a little mindful about. So something that we learned during the iterative process, basically. Um, there are tips about that for you. And activity variation. Like I said, some tool might be returned, but for some groups, verbal might be better. So how can you do a variation there? Or how can you use the same tool for a different age group? So that is what this section talks about. Then there's a chunk on analysis, which we will look at tomorrow. But now, since we are at the template, I'll just quickly run through. So the analysis offers detailed methods on how you can analyze your results. And based on our interactions with nature educators, we realized that this is something which actually, holds people back, might have held us back as well from conducting assessments. So we have tried to simplify it as much as we could because we did not want to keep analysis restricting factor for one to you conduct assessments. So simple pointers on how you can analyze the data. So it's divided into 3 sections for easy reading, how you can organize the responses, some basic calculations, which are simple ways of trying to make meaning from the data. It largely relies on calculating percentages, averages, something a quick formula in Excel can also do that for you. And then there's graphical visualization, which is optional. So this section, if you say want to present the analysis to somebody or just have it for your own record to go back to, you can maybe make a graph and the steps are given, just so that sometimes visual cues help you recall things or visualize things better. One more thing though, to analyze the responses from our field trials, we used tools like Excel, and we do have dummy analysis present for you after every tool. It's done using Excel, but you can use a software of your own liking. If you feel like you don't want to use a software and you want to do it manually, the steps are very easy to be replicated in a manual setting as well. But we'll get into it tomorrow. And then we have interpretation and implication. So, okay, now you have analyzed the data, but what next? So how can you actually interpret the analysis? And implication, how can you actually take this interpretation and use it in your own practice? So what does this finding mean for your practice going ahead? So that is what this section is about. Explore further is just kind of, okay, now you have this information gathered from your learners. How can you use it to maybe conduct an activity later for your students? Or make it fun for the students so that they don't think that, okay, you just took information from them, but what next? So there are some reflections and prompts which you can explore. There is note for facilitators. Again, we have tried to populate NEAF with a lot of notes for facilitators because we want it to be a practitioner friendly guide. So every question that even used to come to our mind, we have tried to bring it as a reflective learning for whoever uses it later. And then there's an example of analysis. So some data inspired from our field trials, we have collated a few rows of it and tried to draw out the whole analysis process. So it might help you visualize, okay, when I collect this data, my data may look like this, it may not as well. But if it does, then what should I do next? How can I use the analysis pointers which are mentioned in the toolkit to actually do analysis? So it's supported by examples. And then there's a sample worksheet after every tool. So, sorry, it's before the example analysis, my bad. So you can take a look at that as well. Some tools are longer in the sense of the worksheet limit. So the additional attachments are there in the supplementary section. So that's about the tool for tools for nature educators who are working with students. But we also have tools for nature educators who are, one second, sorry for the lag. We have tools for nature learning practitioners who are conducting programs for older groups, for educators, for teachers as well. So this as well follows a pretty similar format where we have notes for you to read and a template guide on how you can navigate through the tools. It's fairly similar, but there are some changes here and there. One more thing though, what we realized was some tools which were actually meant for students worked really well with educator groups too. So, which are those tools? It's mentioned in the framework in this section. And then after this, we have another section which is, sorry about the scrolling, yes, which is the self-assessment for nature education practitioners. So if we do have time, we will cover this today as well. So how can you as an educator reflect upon your own practice? This is where this section might be helpful. So it offers tools for educators to reflect upon their programs, reflect upon their relationship with their learners, reflect upon their own thoughts and ideologies and own practices as well. So that's where this section comes. And yeah, this is kind of how NEAF looks like. After this, we do have another section, which again, I might suggest you to be a little more mindful of and not read once but twice, is some conclusion and key considerations that you might need to take into account as a nature education practitioner who is aiming to conduct assessments. It's all about how you can make sense, how you can reflect, and it also tells you when you need to pause to just do a quick check about, okay, what were the moments which surprised you when you were conducting the assessment? So some cues which probably the tool will not directly capture, but indirectly, if you're just observing your learners engage with, you can kind of make a mental note of. And um, I believe will form important learnings for you in your journey as a nature educator as well. So, were there any themes, patterns, or silences also which you did not expect, or which you did, or which surprised you? Then some forms of expressions reflect upon that which felt the most meaningful to you. That will also give you insights into how you're learning, the learning preferences of your learner groups as well. And did anything challenge your assumptions? Because I mean, as nature educators, when we go to probably a place, we do come with our own assumptions and biases, which we cannot deny do exist and do influence the way we engage with our learner groups. But did something happen that challenged it, which you probably did not anticipate, but when the students were engaging in an assessment tool, you probably saw it happen. So make a note of these things. So yeah, this section just reflects upon where do you need pauses? How do you need to make sense of things? So even changes in tones, um, changes in the comfort levels, shifts in body language, shifts in emotional expressions. It covers all of it. And this section is kind of inspired from our other research project, which is more about social emotional learning and how nature plays a role in that. So you can check that out as well on our website. But we have tried to bring a bit of it in NEAF as well. And then there are ethics and care that you need to take because sometimes a learner might not be comfortable sharing some things with you. And what should you do in that moment? And also, some responses might be a little too personal, which probably the learner has shared with you in confidence. So, how do you deal with that? So, just a short blurb about some mindful practices that you need to keep in mind. And NEAF as a living framework, I'll talk about this tomorrow. But yeah, what does it mean for NEAF to be a living framework? Maybe I would want to put that question in your minds as well. And it can be something that we think about as we go through all the tools and as we go through the analysis tomorrow. So yeah, it talks about validity, reliability, feedback, co-creation. I'll not jump or get into this now because I feel like we need to spend some more time with NEAF and the tools and the analysis techniques, and probably best to come to it at the end of the section. So this is roughly what I wanted to run you through before we actually jump on to every tool in detail. If you have any questions, we do have some time. So please feel free to raise your hand and we can pick some questions. And if there are any that you would want to share in the chat box, my colleagues will take a look at it too.
You can also use this time for a quick bio break, or if you just want to stretch your legs, because it's an hour and a half now since we started. So if you want to take a few minutes break, please do that. But just in the interest of time, in case people have questions, we can continue with some rounds of questions as well.
Maybe we can start by taking one or two questions that had come up earlier in the chat while people raise their hand and ask us questions. One of the questions Payal had asked is, how do we keep students interested in the session, especially boys? I had some kids feeling bored in the activity and wanted to discontinue and leave. What kind of activities do we introduce? Could you share a list of games?
Okay, I do resonate with this question because we too have had experiences when we were doing some of our tool trials where some groups of students were not showing engagement and they just wanted to get done with it, or they were kind of creating a ruckus for those who were engaging in it too. So they were just going around causing some disturbances. I think when you're working with students, that is a given, and yeah, but as an alternative, and I think we'll come to that when we're actually going through all the tools. We do have some tools which are drawing based. We do have some tools which are game based, and they do have an alternative as well for it. So best would be to not rely on just one tool to get an assessment done. Maybe have two or three tools. The recommendation that we offer in NEAF is a set of 5 tools which I've selected, and I'll talk about those too. So that would be one way to go ahead with. Maybe not just implement one tool and be like, here, assessment's done. Because yes, there will be groups of students who will not show engagements. There will be groups of students who might not even be present in the movement, and even if they are engaging, they might just be engaging for the sake of it. So best to accommodate more tools in through your nature education program, and they need not have to be all in one go as well. You can plan it in such a way that okay, today I'll do this tool. Maybe a few days later I'll conduct a session and probably use some other tool as an icebreaker. So that's another thing about the tools. They can be used as icebreakers. They can be used as session openers as well. And I'll tell you why when we actually get onto that particular tool. But yeah, I have a mix of tools, and it's okay even if some student is not showing that sense of engagement, because but that shouldn't mean that we should assume that they are not interested in what is being taught, or they are not interested in nature and hence they are not engaging in this particular tool. It might just be that they don't like the format of it, and that's fine too. So yeah, I think just based on how you gauge the situation there, and if you think that okay, maybe I'll follow this up with something else that might be interesting, that could be a way to go ahead.
Thanks, Tanaya. There is one more question in the chat from Supriya. Can we also show an example, a child having gone through pre-assessment and then post?
Yeah, so we do have some examples from the pre-assessment, uh, which we will be showing today. Post-assessment for those are not yet in place solely because of the nature of the nature education program that the students were engaging with. Post-test can be done only when the program comes to an end, and that hasn't happened yet in some cases. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to show it during the workshop, during this course of workshop. But if you're interested too, then maybe you can write to us and I'll make a note to maybe share it with you personally later after the session or something. But pre-assessment, we have a lot of examples to share with you today. So maybe you can be ready for that for now.
Thanks, Tanaya. One more question in the chat. It might also be helpful to highlight whether these tools have been tried with students who have limited reading and writing abilities.
Yes, I will talk about that as well, because we did encounter situations like that, which made us come up with some variations for some tools, and which even made us maybe scrape that tool out for that particular group and come up with a whole new tool as well. Um, I will talk about it. I don't have it on a PPT format, yes, as yet, but maybe when I get onto that tool, I'll make a note for myself to discuss that. Yeah, I think I would want to address that question a little later, if that's okay. Is my screen visible? Okay. So this is the same tool selection guide, which I shared with you when we were scrolling together on Tutor Framework. So starting off with tools for nature education practitioners who work with students and learner groups. So we have a set of 10 tools for you to use. The tool selection guide talks about gives you a quick overview about the tool. So it talks about what the name of the tool is, whether you can use it in the pre-post assessment or both, the age group it would best fit, and what does it assess, and then the three arms of education, nature learning, knowledge, attitude, behavior. What does it tap on the most? So yeah, like I mentioned before, when somebody had asked about what to do when some students are not showing engagement for a particular tool, choose multiple tools. And the minimum recommendation that we suggest based on what we observed during our trials and what we realized was giving us a really nice holistic overview of where our learner group is at. The tools that we felt were justifying it to some extent were tool 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and an optional drawing tool. So these 5 tools are largely based on the return format or verbal format. They give you insights about your learning type of the students. What is their learning preference? What are their perceptions and attitudes towards nature? It gives you insights into their cultural and intergenerational knowledge associations and what spending time in nature means to them. It also kind of talks about the emotional connections and a little bit of ecological literacy and behavioral tendencies, emotional and physical closeness to nature. So it kind of gives you an overview about, okay, the learner group that you're dealing with. In addition to that, what we suggest is maybe use a drawing tool. And why? Because the drawing tools are mapping my route from home to school, drawing nature, and neighborhood mapping. All these three tools kind of give you insights into place-based connection, into sensorial and emotional connections with nature, little bit of spatial awareness as well, because they're mapping their route from home to school or they're mapping their neighborhood. Again, we do realize that not all students will be comfortable with drawing as a medium, and hence the suggestion is just choose one, and even in that one, give them an option of, okay, if you're not comfortable drawing, maybe just write or maybe just share, and you can record the interaction that you have with the child. So 6 tools are recommended by NEAF to use to get a holistic overview of your learning group, out of which 5 are the tools that were on the slide before, and one is a drawing tool. In addition to that, we also have a gamified version of a tool, which is called Who Am I? When somebody asked about students with limited reading writing skills, Who Am I? The tool was born out of our engagement with one such group. And yeah, we will talk about it soon. And then there is nature stewardship tool, which is if you are if you are working with an older bunch of learners, students, obviously, and you want to know about their self-efficacy and what kind of role they see themselves play uh, towards nature. So that's about the tool selection guide. Go through it in your framework, and when you want to pick out a tool, you can just choose a tool from this table, this guide, and yeah, you can jump onto the section which talks about it in more elaborate detail. So let's start with the tools now. Um, and we'll start off with the first tool. If you are referring to the larger NEAF document, then you can go to page 22. So this tool is about understanding the learning preferences that your learner group has. And this you can see in the larger document, or if you feel this is more convenient, you can just look at the slide. So this is what the tool looks at, the learning preference. In addition to this, it also asks the student questions about their demographics. So it asks the learner about their age, about the grade they are in, and also most importantly, how they're feeling, because the mood the child comes to class with on that day will heavily influence the kind of engagement that they share in the assessment as well. So, yeah, and what are the learning preferences that this tool is trying to talk about? If anyone can, in your own space, please read the statements that are there on the screen. And if anyone can unmute and tell, or just raise a hand and tell what do they think the learning preference being targeted in this tool is, or being asked for in this tool is. Go through the statements, read them, and think what it was trying to bring out. Anybody? You can put it in the
Maybe
chat box as well.
maybe
Yes.
just trying to see how we wanted to engage the kids and how what is their reception. They wanted to try out themselves, or they should be guided. What should be the
Yes.
methodology going forward?
Almost there. Very close. Does anyone want to add something to this point? If nobody does, then we will go with what we have. So yes, this tool is trying to bring about an insight for the educator about what approach they should follow. And like said, whether they like to work on themselves or they would like to work with somebody else, this tool is trying to see if the learner group leans towards social learning preferences or independent learning preferences. So what we do here is we provide the students with the worksheet, and they have to select the level of agreement with every sentence. And if you look at the table here carefully, you will realize that the statement 1, 3, and 5 are more on the lines of social learning preferences, whereas statement 2, 4, and 6 are more on the lines of independent learning preferences. An insight from our field trial, what we realized is sometimes very young kids find it difficult to understand, make sense of what this thumbs up, thumbs down thing exactly is. And all those of you who are on the larger NEAF document right now, we do have a warm up section there where we are encouraging educators to maybe conduct a small game like thing at the start of the before implementing the tool, where you probably put a statement out there, say, I like ice creams. And if the student is agreeing with it, maybe ask them to agree and disagree with a show of thumbs. One thumbs up for agree, two thumbs up for strongly agree, and thumbs down for otherwise. So play out a few sentences like that, which are not anywhere closely related to nature, more to do with their own personal lives. Say, I like going to the movies, I like playing cricket, and then ask the kids to respond. Get them familiar with this thumbs up, thumbs down action, and then present them with the worksheet and ask them to attempt it. So, to summarize, this tool gives us insights into the learning preferences of the learners, which the nature educator can then use to plan their program. So, if you have a group which is leaning more towards social learning preference, then have engagements which expect them to work in groups, um, and vice versa. But also be mindful of the fact that sometimes this tool might not bring about all the learning preferences, because we do have other learning preferences as well. So the best way would be to follow a multimodal approach where you have different learning preferences taken into account to build your nature education program. But this just give you some idea. And then when you conduct a post intervention, you can compare and see, okay, what kind of learners were able to better grasp something. And that might also be a commentary on how you might have to tweak your nature education program. So that's about tool one. Uh, can we move to the next tool? Maybe it's a quick thumbs up for whoever's with me right now. Yeah, okay. So the next tool is what is nature. If you're looking at the NEAF document, then you can go to page 30. So yeah, here what we do is we ask the kids, ask the learners 3 questions. What comes to your mind when you think about nature? What do you like about nature? And what do you dislike about nature? What we have realized is during our trials, what worked best was maybe before you throw out these questions to your students, ask them to take a moment and think about nature, think about their surroundings, think about everything that they like, dislike, and just ask them to reflect on their own thoughts. Of course, based on their attention and energy span, you might have to decide on for how long do you want them to do this self reflection activity. And one way to actually implement this tool is to give the worksheets. But what we realized was if you are working with smaller groups, or if you want to make the activity a little more fun, maybe hand them post-it notes and ask them to write each response on a different colored post-it note. And then later you can probably stick it on the wall or something, or on a chart paper. And once you are done with your assessment and you have got the responses that you set out to in the first place, what you can do is call the students closer to you and then probably ask them to look at the wall and see what their peers shared for every section, and then have a very interactive discussion about it. So that's what I meant when I said that some tools can be a session starter as well, in addition to being an assessment in themselves. And this is one of those kind of tools. Because then you can imagine having a larger discussion about, okay, what do your peers don't like? What do you don't like? Why do you don't like it? If you're scared, why are you scared? It can become a it can become a circle where you are exchanging your thoughts and perceptions about nature as well. But coming back to the tool, so yeah, this tool is largely for knowing your perceptions towards nature and conceptualization of the word nature, because nature in itself as a word can be interpreted differently by different groups of people. Not everyone will see nature the same way you do. Not everyone associates the same meaning with nature the way you do. So this tool helps bring that out as well. because we did get some very interesting responses when we asked this question. And it also talks about positive and negative emotions, experiences, or beliefs tied to nature and the factors that influence them. Because, like I said, we have questions like what do you dislike and what do you like? So, safe to assume that what do you like is more of a positive association and what do you dislike forms a negative association. It may not as well, but that's what we have found it to be. And then that becomes a baseline information for a nature educator to um, build the nature education program on. If there are some misconceptions shared, you would know that, okay, you might have to address those. And if there are some positive associations shared, you might just want to use them to build a relationship between students and nature as well. So I would want to take a moment here and share some of the responses that we got for a tool like this. Of course, this doesn't justify the large bank of responses and the very interesting responses that we found students to share, but there are some here. So, when asked what comes to your mind when you think about nature, some students shared that whenever they think about nature, they think about good things and it makes them feel good. So, there's an emotional relationship right there that you are getting to see through this response. Then somebody said that their home and school as well is a part of nature. So it makes you wonder, okay, what does nature really mean? Does it mean everything that is around them, or does it mean everything that they are a part of? So again, an interesting insight for a nature educator to think about, because home and school are otherwise built infrastructures, right? But yet there is this child who thinks of it as nature. So what does nature mean to them? Then, when asked, what do you like about nature? Trees give us oxygen to breathe and fruits to eat. This could be an observation the child made, or it could be a very textbookish response as well. But yeah, what we realized was when we asked these questions, trees were the things that were coming to the minds very often when we were asking the question, what do you like about nature, especially? Then there were some who just said everything. So, but when asked about what is it that you dislike about nature, there were some again who were making association with trees, but more from a human lens. Like they don't like it when people cut trees, or they were being very specific and saying that they don't like snakes because they're scared of them. So you do realize a lot of underlying emotional relationships or connections that students might share, learners might share with nature, or some of their own experiences that they might want to reflect, or it could be some personal thoughts as well, like my home, my school. So this tool basically gives you an overview of that. Do we have any questions for this tool in particularly? Or we can move on to the next one. Let me know. If we don't, then we can move on to the next tool. Maybe show of thumbs up for the next tool. Okay. So the next tool is about stories and memories about nature. And if you are looking at the document, it's on page 42. So for this tool, there's an option of either make it individual and return or make it verbal for a group. So we have tried this tool in multiple ways. We had asked kids to just sit and write things on their worksheet. We had conducted one-on-one interviews as well, and we had conducted group interviews as well. One-on-one interviews and group interviews were conducted because we realized that the learners were again too young and they were not able to keep up with the writing their stories and memories part of it, and they just felt more comfortable talking about it, and we realized that they were more comfortable having an interaction about it where we were also questioning them, okay, why this story in particular, what happened next if they were talking about their memories. So that format kind of helped. So again, if your learning group is more comfortable sitting by themselves and writing their responses, then go for a return one, which I'm pretty sure by that point you might have probably gauged as an educator. Or if you feel that having an interaction, a larger focus group kind of an interaction where everyone is talking, or one-on-one interaction works the best. then do that. You can always record the responses with consent, obviously, and then probably note it down and then transcribe. So this is the worksheet which we use if we are following a worksheet format. There are 3 questions. Can you think of any songs, poetries, or movies or stories that talk about nature? Then, how do you feel about spending time in nature? This is a little close ended because we realized if we kept it open ended, it was coinciding with the memory or experience question as well. So, there were similar responses coming, and we were not really understanding if they like spending time in nature or they don't. So, that's why we have kept it a little close ended. And can you share a memory or experience you have with nature? And we made space for them to even share scary or uncomfortable memories if they're comfortable sharing. So, why do you think in an assessment tool kit, you need a tool like this? If anybody would want to share what they believe this tool will bring about, or how will this information aid you as an educator, please feel free to unmute or raise your hand or put it in the chat box.
I guess this tool will help us to understand that how our students know about their own. I mean, if we are talking about like story songs, they do
Mm.
connect the stories and the movies to the nature or not, or they're just
Right.
seeing it as a movie or something like that.
Absolutely. That is one of the thoughts that we had in our mind too when we put together something like this. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else?
How sensitive they are to their surroundings and what kind of impact is it creating?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that can be one of the aspects too. Anything else? Anybody wants to try?
We have a comment on the chat box. Khushbu says connection with nature.
Connection with nature, yes.
Maybe it helps verbalize what the children already know, already they relate to the nature.
Right. So it can bring about lived experiences as well. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think all of you have shared good enough points, and all of this is something that we believe this tool would bring about too. And during the trial, we actually saw it come into action as well. So,
Tanaya, do you want to tell everyone the little thing that happened with that TikTok video, that you shared with us? That might be
yes,
interesting for this group. Yeah.
yes, Veena, definitely. Yeah, so when we tried this tool with really young kids, um, we were not aiming for trying it with a young group, but it so happened that some students who had come to that learning center had younger kids along with them who had joined them. And we wanted to engage them as well into this tool. So we made it into a focus group because there were like 3 or 4 of them. And we asked them this question: can you think of any stories, songs, or poems, or movies that talk about nature? And we initially thought that, okay, they might talk about some stories they have heard from somebody or something that they read in their textbooks, or probably a movie that they will cite. But what we realized was the kids, all of them together, started singing out one particular song which was going viral at one point that year. And what was going viral on Instagram Reels and on YouTube Shorts, and it did have, in their defense, it did have elements of nature in it too. And we were taken up by surprise when we actually saw that happen. And it also made us think about how into social media very young kids also can be. Of course, it was nice to hear them, but it was something that we probably hadn't expected. And that only reinforced us to have options like songs as well and make it a very open space for learners to share whatever they have in mind. So don't be surprised if when you try this tool out in your learning spaces, if you see a lot of Instagram and YouTube trending stuff coming in as well. So, but it does talk about some narratives, some cultural connections, modern day cultural connections, perhaps. And yes, this tool tries to bring that out. Along with it, it tries to bring out some experiential connections with nature, more of your lived experiences, because memories are asked for to be shared. Then, what is your approach towards time in nature? What does being in nature actually mean? Um, so that is one more thing. And how are our relationships shaped by memories? If you all recall at the start of the presentation, I did mention that this tool particularly is inspired from a lot of research done in the space of geographies and children, nostalgia and memories and relationship with nature and how it influences. And we believe that asking these questions did bring those things out. So I want to share some more responses in addition to the Instagram viral kind of response that we received. When asked about stories, somebody told us about a story that they had heard from their grandmother, which happened to be a local folklore. So there we have a cultural connection which is kind of emerging just because gave them the space to talk about a story that they have in mind. And it gives you context about what associations and relationships and learnings about nature your learners are already coming with. And this only reinforces the belief that, okay, children do know something even before you can provide them information about something. And this is what we try to bring out through this tool. Then there is somebody who said Mowgli because, yes, it is in some sense associated with nature. And we did ask them to share about movies. It's nice to see that they're making the connection right there. Then, when asked about my memories and nostalgia, they spoke about how they like to go to a river with their friends. So, this also tells you about how social connections kind of influence your relationship with nature. And then there's a lived experience about somebody having rescued a bird that fell off a tree. So it does give insight into behavioral leanings as well. That okay, they wanted to protect something that they thought was probably in danger at that point. Um, so yeah, it would be nice to maybe once you're done with this tool, probably ask students also to reflect and share the stories with each other and kind of create a reflection circle sorts. So that's about this one tool. Um, and tomorrow, when we'll be working with analysis, I'll share some more responses because we might pick this tool tomorrow to learn how to actually do some hands-on analysis work. Then we have feelings towards nature. This tool I might be sharing a little bit of personal bias with as well because this was the very first tool, one of the very first tools to make it to NEAF, and something that we had kind of thought of when we started coming up with the idea of NEAF as well. So what you do here is you show students, show learners a series of 15 pictures, videos if you have the amenities to, and if you don't have projection available in that learning space, you can always print out pictures and show it to them, or try some other creative ways too if you can think of. So what we do is we show the picture and then we have some emotions that we have provided the child with, some emoticons into some sense, and there's a empty one as well, which makes space for other. And then we do ask them questions about, can you share something that you already know about this picture? What will you do if you see it? Do you think this is an important part of the world around you? And give the children the space to select more than one emotion as well, because feelings can be confusing. You can feel angry and happy on seeing something. You can feel scared and happy if you see something. You can always be confused about it as well, or you can feel surprised and wanting to learn a little more while also having disgust for a particular thing. So keep that space open, then let them choose as many emotions as they want to. uh, yeah, and on that note, why do you think this tool has made it to NEAF? What do you think this tool will tell us? And how will it help you as an educator? this kind of information, knowing this information. Anybody wants to give it a shot? If there are no responses coming in, for interest of time, we can move ahead.
Can,
So,
can
oh,
I
sorry,
try?
yes. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think with all these emotions, I'm also understanding that there is kinesthetic emotions, since like facial expressions can also have the idea of like, embodied perception. So maybe
Mhm.
like, kinesthetic abilities of like, children, how they reflect, how they express can also come out quite vividly, like once you have
Definitely.
like, emotions association with elements of nature as well.
Definitely, yes. In fact, building on that, what we have suggested in the framework is in the warm-up section that maybe show children something again which is not connected to nature. Again, let's just stick to an ice cream, and ask them to emote and maybe go through every expression that is there in the tool first and talk to kids about what their emotion means and have them maybe express it through enactment or something and yeah, build on that and then you actually go on to the stool as well because emotion sometimes can become a complicated thing to explain to kids as well, so it's better to bring in their own personal experiences and then try to associate something and then make a connection with nature.
There are some questions as feelings and connections. Chandana asks, how do we warm them up with emotion items?
Yeah, so how do we warm them up? Like I said, show them a picture of something mostly related to their personal experiences and not to nature, and ask them, okay, how are they feeling when they are seeing it? And then maybe enact every emotion. And as an educator, that's on you as well, that you have to kind of be that expressive in front of your learner groups. Or if you're not comfortable, pick a volunteer and ask them to. So, yeah, these are some ways you can try warming up, but warm up for this activity is needed just because you need to bring back the students to the fact that they have to circle an emotion, they have to fill in an emotion here. So this activity does require a good 5-6 minutes of warming up. So you can have a list of pictures, like you can show them pictures of their own school for that matter, and be like, how do you feel about it? Or and ask them to select an emotion. So yeah, that's them. And on the tool front, this tool also helps us identify elements that may trigger fear or avoidance and recognize species that evoke curiosity, wonder, affection, because you have those emotions listed there, and understand the level of ecological knowledge, including some misconceptions as well. Because when you're asking them, can you share something that you know about this picture? There is a high chance that there is a chance that there might be some misconceptions coming into play, or some cultural ecological knowledge also, which you probably weren't aware of, but probably is believed in that geography. So things like that. And detect early behavioral leanings towards nature because you're asking them, what will you do if you see it? And I'll give you some examples for this. So when you ask them about what about any information they know about the particular picture, sometimes they might talk about aesthetics, sometimes they might talk about their feelings, sometimes they might even talk about some superstitious beliefs like it brings bad luck. Behavioral leanings, when you ask them what will you do if you see it, there were some responses, and these are real responses, by the way. Somebody said they want to throw a stone at something. Somebody said they want to touch it. There were some really nice responses about how some students said that they want to look at it, remember how it looks, and then go and draw it. Probably they knew about journaling as an activity. Probably did something that they practice themselves. So yeah, that's something that comes in. How important is it in the world around you? Some children might choose to just answer in yes, no, unsure. Some might give a reasoning. So there is again space for a learner to decide how they want to answer this question as well. So that's about the tool 4. Then the next tool, this is a very straightforward tool. It's called Nature and Me, and it is inspired from that inclusion of self and nature scale. So again, during our trials, we realized that it was becoming a little difficult. The whole concept of what is self, what is nature, it becomes difficult for what is self, especially becomes difficult for children to know. So we kind of toned it down and adapted it to fit the context, and we feel like that worked out a little bit better than the inclusion of self and nature scale. So you show them two sheets. And also, I'm so sorry, I did not tell the page number for the earlier tool, but this tool is on page 74 or 72. So here one circle represents self, one circle represents nature. The distance between the two circles represents how closely you feel connected to nature. And then you ask the child to choose one. Warm-ups for this are also suggested. Two warm-ups have been suggested for this activity in particular. You either give the child circular cutouts of art sheet and ask them to draw nature, and then have another circular art sheet where you have a human figure drawn, and then show them, hold those two circles, and then bring them closer, and then tell them, okay, how close do you think you're to nature? Are you this close? Are you this close? Like, act it out, and ask the child to select. Another way of warming up is pick two volunteers or one volunteer, or you, and if you have a co-facilitator, one of you becomes self, one of the other person becomes nature, and maintain a distance and stand at a particular distance and then start coming closer to each other. So that is a little bit of a role play involved. So again, see what fits best for your group. Physical proximity with nature also similarly. The difference between the two, what we realize is sometimes a child might be living in a place which is very close to nature, but they might not feel emotionally close to nature, and it can happen the other way around as well. And we have had responses which kind of showed us the both. So that's one thing. But of course, try it out with older groups. With very young kids, it might take up too much of your time in trying to explain them. So again, it's something for the facilitator to gauge and take a call for. This basically gives us insights into the relationship of the learner with nature, and also how much a learner feels a part of nature. So on an emotional level, and how near or far physically a learner feels nature is in their everyday lives. This can bring about some topics of accessibility as well into discussion in the classrooms. Yeah, that's about this tool. Um, Again, it's you can use it, but tweak it, tweak it in the way you present it. So that's about nature and me.
Tanaya, before you go to the next tool, there was one question from Sudeshna regarding tool 4. She's asking that she says that the number of emotions or emojis is quite wide in the tool. Was there a reason for choosing these 8? And we do have a response to that, so please go ahead.
Yes, there was a reason for choosing these 8, because when we initially started out with this tool, we had only 4 emotions, and those were very vague. It was anger, it was fear, disgust, confusion, and love or something. And then we realized that the children came up to us saying that they are not able to accommodate other emotions that they were feeling. And that's kind of how we started narrowing down to the emotions that we presently have. In fact, we have received responses where we felt like somebody was telling us that these emojis or emotions also feel short of. So that's the reason why we have one circle which is empty, because we feel like no number of emotions might probably do justice to the emotions that prevail towards nature. But yeah, they may feel a little wide for some age groups. So you might have to explain them in depth about what every emotion means. And it is a little bit supported by literature as well, where we realize the vast number of feelings that get elicited towards nature. So we just tried our best to cover it, to be fair. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move to tool 6, and tool 6, 7, and 8 are drawing tools. So tool 6, if you're looking at a framework, go to page 80. Mapping my route from home to school generally requires a worksheet because you need space for a child to draw. And this is the tool that we have. So why do you think we have a tool which is asking the child to draw something from their home to school? Anybody wants to try it?
To express themselves better.
To express themselves. Yes, we did realize that while drawing, they are able. There are studies which do say that while drawing, children are able to better express themselves.
Um,
Any other?
to build their observation skills.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons too.
Sudeshna says the same, and Islam says kids love colors.
Yeah.
That's well, yes.
Chintan says, what nature elements do they observe while they walk or travel?
Hmm. Yes, I think all of this does cover why we thought of this tool, and kind of even covers why the next two tools were put into place in the first place. Put into place in the first place. Yes, sorry. So, yeah, we wanted to see what exactly it is that the children pay attention to, listen to, observe, smell, or touch, or just use their sensory organs for while they are out there, you know, uh, coming to school from their homes. So, some sort of place-based learning, some sort of sensorial engagement, some sort of emotional connections, observations. All of this was why we kind of thought of putting a tool like this in place. And to add to it, the next three tools are also inspired from one of the other projects that are nature classrooms. It's called Children and Nature in the City. So if you are interested in that, it basically talks about differences in geographies and perceptions of nature. But you can take a look at that because this is kind of built on a tool that was used in that study. It's there on the website. So coming back to this tool particularly, it's about geographies and how individuals perceive their surroundings, sensory connections, observations, hearing, all of it, and emotional connections with place. Um, what we realized was when we asked some kids, of course, there were a couple of kids who were not comfortable with drawing. So for them, we did provide them an alternative. And there is one really neatly done alternative that I would want to share soon. So this tool, particularly if done in the post test as well, the idea is to compare and see how much the child has started observing, after a nature education program that you just conducted. It's highly possible, and it's not possible as well. Probably they're following the same route, the same way that they used to before. But the hope might be to see, okay, there might be a couple of trees that they observed this time, or birds that they heard to this time, which they want to mention. So it's a good reflection, a good comparative pre-post kind of a tool, and emotional connections with place because sometimes in drawings you can clearly see that okay, the child has probably paid more attention to one particular area and have put everything that they're seeing there, hearing there in greater details. It could be an emotional connection with the place, or it could be that that place has something to do with it. Of course, we don't want to be intrusive, but you can kind of see it there. So there are some kids, and like somebody said, kids love colors. Yes, some kids did. And they themselves volunteered to use colors when we had actually not even put that as a must. So yeah, some kids choose to keep things vague, some kids choose to do it in detail. Here you can see this was a pre-assessment. So most of for both the drawings, you can clearly see that just roads and trees and houses. But that also does tell you some things like, these two drawings, for example. This one kind of has a little bit of a mix of a paved, unpaved road. This one has just paved road. So you do see some insights coming into place like this as well. And this is the one which I which I mentioned that the child was not comfortable drawing. And they said that they will not attempt the tool at all if they asked to draw. And then we were like, okay, maybe you can choose to write. And they followed a really nice order of things, like whatever they saw from the second they stepped out of the house till they reached school, they just started listing it. And that also serves a purpose. I mean, end of the day, even if it's a drawing tool, you're just going to extract information from it, which this method of doing it also gives you. So that's about mapping my route from home to school. I'll just run through the next two tools also
One
because they are
second.
drawing tools.
Sorry, Tanaya. Just quick responses from people. So,
Okay, sorry.
yeah. So while Chintan had said what nature elements do they observe while they walk or travel, Rajat says, or what nature elements they don't observe, right? So another very important thing. And it becomes useful to do, to understand after your nature education interventions, what are the kind of drawings that they then, include, whether there's much more nature in those drawings post intervention or not. Islam also says that it's a reflection to of the subconscious image of the world that they inhabit, which normally they might see but never give a thought to display with all the senses. Again, a very important point. Anja had an interesting and fun comment. I did this with my students, only the pre, and they added buildings, petrol bunks, and pani puri stalls. I'm looking forward to repeating this exercise to see how it will look after 1 year of nature education with them. Yeah. We had some interesting results from the previous research work that we did as well, and you can see that in the report. Yeah. Thank you, which I put the link of that in the chat box. Thanks, Sanaya. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Pena, for reading those comments out. Yeah, all of them really do make sense. And yeah, so this tool can actually do bring out about a lot of things. And thanks for putting in your thoughts. Really helpful. And yeah, so I'll move on to the next tool, which is drawing nature. And this is kind of on similar lines, but here you don't ask the child to actually recall the route that they followed from home to school and draw it or something. Here you ask them to be more spontaneous, more in the moment, more impromptu. So what you probably just ask them to queue up and again think about nature. If you're looking at, sorry to cut off, but if you're looking at the larger framework, this tool's on page 86. Yeah, so here you just ask them to think about nature, and whatever the first thing is that comes to their mind when they think about nature, they have to draw it on the board. So that is how we do this tool. And sorry. Again, it is about ecological awareness about nature around them, perceptions towards nature, and conceptualization of the word nature. So, if you recall, these are the things that the second tool, which was nature, which was what comes to your mind when you think about nature, what do you like about nature, what do you dislike about nature, also trying to bring about. So, the suggestion would be you can choose either one of the two, depending on the kind of comfort your students have, or a better option would be to do both and see what comes out. Of course, that depends on the kind of time because this is a long drawn tool to some sense. Since every child or every individual has to one by one come to the board and put their drawings. I don't have a picture to share with from a student learner group, but we did try this with a group of educators, and we realized that they equally had fun doing it. So you can either do it in one round. There's an option of asking them to queue up and do it in the second round. You can make it a little tricky by asking them to not repeat what their peers have drawn, just so that you make them think a little more deeper about, what is out there in nature. It becomes tougher for those kids who are a little later in the order, but that's why you do it in two rounds. So yeah, and maybe have a snippet or a snapshot of it before a nature learning intervention and after, and see if there are things which probably the kids were not seeing before, like it was mentioned for the earlier tool, come in the post test. So for all you know, maybe they're not drawing insects in the pre-test, in the pre-assessment. But now, after your nature education intervention, they have started noticing those things. So you kind of see what the kids used to not notice before, but have started noticing later. So all the drawing tools, to just put it simply, are give a more better insight when you have a pre-assessment and the post-assessment both done. So that's about the drawing tool. Are there any comments, thoughts, suggestions anybody wants to talk about? Or we can even cover the next drawing tool and have it all together.
There are a few comments in the chat box. Nidhi wants to share her experience. She says, while working with kids studying in an environment where they are used to rote learning and not having opportunity to exercise their choice, it takes a lot of scaffolding to make them understand that they can freely express what they really think and feel. Also, Shamima says, with this, students will not only observe the beauty of nature, but also they will know that the threats to nature through observation.
Yeah, I think both very important, valid points. Um, so yeah, thanks for sharing that. And we'll move on to the next and the last drawing tool. And we can open up space for discussion post that as well if we have time. So this one is neighborhood mapping, and it's a drawing tool again. And if you are looking at a larger framework, this one, I'm sorry, once again, sorry. Yes, this one is on page 91. So here what you do is you just give the kids a very big chart paper or use a board for it and just ask them to, from a bird's eye view, think about how their surrounding looks. And suggestion is to do it as a group activity. But of course, there should be some sort of moderation because it shouldn't be a scenario where there are some more dominating voices in that particular group. So divide the group or ask the whole classroom to be one group depending upon the number of students that you're working with, and kind of gauge the situation and take a call on what works best. But yeah, this is a bird's eye point of view drawing kind of a tool. And what do you think is different between this one and the earlier two tools? If anybody wants to give it a shot.
Maybe it is neighborhood mapping is relational, with respect to your position or your active. How do you say? Where do you live and what is surrounding? Observation is static kind of, whereas neighborhood mapping could be a dynamic or more relative thoughts.
Yes, dynamic and relative in the sense of not just your surroundings, but also because there's some sort of a peer exchange of thoughts, exchange of ideas. So there's a discussion happening about the neighborhood in front of your eyes among your learning group. So that also gives you a lot of the cues which the tool might not directly measure, but as an educator, you are observing. And there's some sense of spatial awareness as well, which comes into picture, and place-based connections as well. So I'll just quickly summarize this one. It talks about geographies and how individuals and different individuals perceive their surroundings. A child might look at a particular area when they're doing this whole neighborhood mapping thing from a bird's eye point of view, completely differently from what another learner in the same group might. So it brings different perspectives as well and different sensorial connections too. Because one thing that we need to be mindful of for all three drawing activities is not just ask the students to focus on what they're seeing, but also what they're hearing, what they're feeling. So kind of bringing like all senses into play and emotional connections with the place. So all these place-based tools, they kind of do bring about that as well. And here there is a map which has been drawn by a group of learners. So I think the whole class got together for this one map, and they have put some small labels as well. So encourage them to label things. So it becomes more descriptive and less intimidating. So it doesn't put the pressure of having artistic accuracy. So they can draw placeholder stuff and put a label on it as well. And it gives you an insight into how the students are seeing the neighborhood. It would be really interesting to probably do something like this with other groups, other learning groups, or other teacher groups in that particular area and see if there's some differences in the way students are perceiving things and the adults. So that also can be something to explore further, let's say. One point that I missed out while talking about the three drawing tools is because these tools are emphasizing so much on neighborhood, at least tool 7 and tool 8, especially, not tool 6 and 8, not 7 as much. The tools which are emphasizing so much on neighborhood, on route mapping, uh, please be mindful about the fact that different students might be coming from different neighborhoods. Some of them might be facing hardships while crossing that journey, or coming from areas which might be taking an emotional toll on them, or might not be that sustainable. So the caution would be to just be mindful about it and be welcoming about these things as well, and create an emotionally supportive environment for learners to express all of it too. So the ninth tool is the
Tanaya,
gamified one.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. Can we go back to tool 8? I think it'll be
Yes.
useful to just clarify what we mean by neighborhood here. And so, do we mean neighborhoods around the school if we're doing this in a school, in a school campus?
Oh.
Or is it can also be around the community spaces that they are occupying? So it really depends on that. So it's useful for the educator to clarify what they mean by neighborhood. Sorry, can you just add a little bit to that if needed? Thank you.
Yes, apologies for missing that, and thanks for pointing out, Veena. So, because this tool is where we are bringing all the learners together and asking them to do a group activity, it's best to ask them to map the neighborhood which they all are sharing together. And the safest option would be to probably ask them to map the neighborhood of their school, or if it's a learning center, then the neighborhood of the learning center, just so that all of them are kind of on the same page about the geography that has been concerned for this particular tool. So best would be for the educator to specify that, hey, we have to map the neighborhood of our school. So assuming a bird is flying over a school, what do you see around it? So yeah, so that's what the children did for the map that is being displayed on the screen as well.
I'll just add one more thing also. What might be interesting for you as educators also is to, if you're working with government schools, for example, it's possible that most students will come from very similar geographies, right? So the areas in which they occupy or live, including the routes and the school surroundings, may not differ a lot. Whereas if you're working with children, in private schools, often students come from distant areas. And so the socio-economic dynamics will be very different, or might vary within the school setup itself, the kind of students who are coming to that particular private school. So as an educator, you might find those differences interesting. So make sure you also plan that as part of your tool that you're designing and when you're analyzing the data as well.
Thanks for that insight, Veena. Yes. So the next tool is a game-based tool, and I remember somebody asking during one of the questions and thoughts sections, what do we do with groups where students lack or are restricted in learning and reading and writing skills? So this is where a tool like this comes into picture. And this tool was inspired from a brainstorming session that we had with one of our collaborators, um, with whom we tried out some of the tools. The learning group that they were working with had restrictions as far as reading and writing went, and we realized that the engagement from the students was somewhere missing, though they had a lot to share and a lot to talk about. So, of course, we tried to do the rest of the tools in a verbal format with them, but then we got inspired by one of the activity that the nature educator used to conduct with the students, which was a kind of a charades inspired activity. And that's how this tool came into picture. So what you do here is you pick out a student volunteer. And if you're looking at the NEAF document, it's page 98. You pick out a student volunteer and you ask them to role play an animal or a tree or a landscape. And you ask them to not enact it, but just have it in their minds. And then the rest of the class has to ask yes or no questions. So they'll ask a couple of questions, then the volunteer will say yes for what is accurate to the role that they are playing and no to what negates it. And this whole interaction is your data right there. So I think an example be might help better support this. So the tool itself is built to help conceptualize and classify biodiversity, to learn about the familiarity of the learners with the local species, what cues do they rely on, are there any misconceptions that persist, and so on. So here is a dialogue exchange. So the volunteer here was role playing an ant, just for context. The student group asked, "Do you live on land?" The learner said yes. When the student group asked if they are familiar, they are found in the city, the learner said yes. Are you an insect? Again, it was a yes. Are you a cockroach? It was a no because they were an ant. But are you an insect found in a homes? But you are an insect found in a homes too, right? The volunteer said yes to this as well. And when spider, no. And I would want to come to this point particularly later. Then do you live in groups? Again, it was a yes for that. And finally, someone asked if they are an ant, and the learner said yes. And the dialogue was complete. So, what did we realize from this was some misconceptions. So, despite knowing that it was an insect that the student was role playing, somebody did say spiders, and spiders are not an insect. So, that becomes a misconception that came up. And then you realize that the questions that were being asked to the volunteer were more centered towards the habitat and later towards like a group living system. So you do realize what are the biodiversity, what are the ecological cues that a student takes into account when they are trying to decipher what the volunteer is role playing. So that also talks about the familiarity that they have with ecological concepts, if that's what you are trying to build. And with the biodiversity around, what are the cues, the familiarity with the local species. So all of this is what the tool is trying to bring about. The tools and open up for discussion. So the nature stewardship tool is again for older students, and this tool we co-developed with Ticket Tales, who also trialed out our other tools for the assessment work. And we tried to build something which tries to bring about topics where we are asking the students about their role in the environment, their role in the how much influence do they think they have as a group, and also ask them about some awareness related stuff, and also bring about a scenario based question where we are putting them in a hypothetical scenario and asking them, what will you do if you are in this situation, kind of a question. And we also ask them to draw about how their neighborhood currently looks like. So there is an integration of a drawing tool here as well. They are free to write again. And we also ask them, how do you wish it would look like? So there's some sort of a hopeful thinking that we are trying to bring about, but keeping the space open for even imaginative, creative kind of thinking or thoughts that they would want to share. So it is about how learners perceive their role and abilities in influencing their local environment, their understanding of relationship between individual and collective action, what actions feel possible, difficult, or unrealistic. So it's all from a very stewardship lens. And we give them space to also express emotional barriers or even motivators which are connected to stewardship, connected to their own thinking as well. So these are basically the tools that we have in NEAF. One thing that I would again want to emphasize is NEAF is not prescriptive. These tools are meant only to support your practice. You are free to, and you are encouraged to, in fact, choose only what feels most useful adapt where it's needed, and implement the tools in a way which is relevant to your context, learners, and goals. Remember this point whenever you're going through all the tools. You don't have to pick them up as they are. You have to tweak them. You can adapt them. You can make them completely your own by even, building something on them or being inspired to create some of your own tools for that matter. So that's about the tools. Do we have any questions or thoughts? I think we can open the floor for discussion.
Tanaya, since we are only at 12:43, do you think it's useful to show one tool that we can use if we're working with an adult audience? So with teachers or educators, because Saeed also asked for
Sure.
that. So yeah.
Sure, yes, I'll do that. I'll just give me a second because I'll have to share the framework.
Document, yes. And if there are others who are interested in us showcasing the tools for that you can use for adults, for an adult audience, if there's time tomorrow, we can do that for the first 5 minutes also.
So, like I mentioned is my screen visible first of all? Okay. So, this is one tool called My Classroom Practices. This is if your adult audience happens to be teachers, happens to be educators. So this one gives you insights into, I'll maybe jump to the worksheet directly. This one gives insights into how the teachers' practices are, what their thoughts are, what their own assumptions, biases about students in their classroom are. And it also reflects upon the practices that they follow. So, what kind of approach do you use in during your teaching facilitation? What kind of methods do you use? And there's a kind of a scale again with a few sentences, with a few statements about whether your innate biases reflect in your lesson plans. Uh, do you create opportunities for learners? So it's a very practice based tool, and because we are looking at nature learning particularly, knowing how they perceive the conventional, the formal subjects which are otherwise taught in an academic setting also helps you gain some insights. So there's space for that as well. So this is one tool, but this obviously can be used only if your adult group is our teachers. But there is one more, and this is another mapping activity. Here we, however, to draw particularly, but we present them with this worksheet and we ask them to visualize the places that are important to them, the places that they will go every day to, nature around me that I see every day, the places that they want to go to but they haven't really been able to visit, then sounds, smells, memories. So you kind of, it's a sheet with concentric circles and you ask them to fill it. It's a very reflective process. So the facilitation has to kind of reflect that as well, where you give them a prompt and you pause at every point. You can ask them to draw it from scratch also if you feel that's more effective, which we have seen for it to be instead of giving a worksheet. But the worksheet is just a reference for the nature educator here. So that is one of the tools. It's kind of different from the one that we do for students. And there's a story behind it because we did try the student tools for educators, for adult groups. And when we asked them to, okay, map the route you from your home to your workplace, they were not able to because they said that they're so in the zone of reaching the space at a particular time. And then there are thoughts about what's happening back at home which are kind of cluttering their minds that even if they want it to be a peaceful journey where they are noticing things around them, they are not able to. And hence we thought of just redoing the whole activity for an older group. And this seems to work. So this is one of it. And again, if you're working with teachers, then this tool, My Students and Nature, is a space for you to share your thoughts about how you feel your students are connected to nature. So it's kind of putting yourself in your students' shoes and also trying to think about what are the sources that they get to learn about nature from. Do they even need to know about nature? Do you think your role as a teacher is somewhere helping that relationship build? Um, and what sources do students do they learn from nature? Do you connect your subject with nature? So again, it's a little questionnaire based, but all these questions are kind of important questions to probably reflect upon as a teacher, and for you as a nature educator also to know the context of your teacher. Where are your teachers coming from? And there's a the post assessment for this particular tool is different. Generally, all the tools in NEAF have similar pre-assessment, post-assessment, but here the questions are different. But one more thing that I would want to mention is, and if you look at the framework, you will see that the tools for educators section also talks about some assessments which we had designed for students, but they seem to play very well with older audiences also. So feelings to nature, where you show them some pictures and you ask them to select the emotions and answer a few questions along with, is a tool which really plays well even if you work with adults. The drawing nature tool, the screenshot that I had actually put in the presentation was from a engagement we had with a group of educators. So there can be some replicability happening in that sense as well, where you can use the student tools for adult groups by changing your style of facilitation, because adults do come with their own set of lived experiences and their own biases. So obviously the facilitation will have to be a little different, but the tools surely can be replicated. So that's about the educator tools. But if you want to know more, then we definitely can, maybe after after this workshop, or you can write to us and we can have a separate discussion just about tools for older for adults as well. Hope that answered it.
Thank you, Tanaya.
Tanay, there's a question in the chat box by Tajamul. When we design assessment questions, how do we avoid personal bias? I have noticed in my own experience that I often create questions based on what I feel is good, but that may not always align with what truly measures student understanding.
Yeah, that is a little tricky space to navigate to as somebody who is designing an assessment. And I think acknowledging it in the first place is the first step to it. But yeah, I think that's a little difficult to have a concrete answer to. To not have too many leading questions, we tried to keep our questions vague because we wanted to just present a question more like a prompt and have the learners share their own experiences and reflections with. So, if you might have noticed when we are asking them, can you share a memory that you have with nature? Can you share a story or a movie or a poetry about nature? We are not emphasizing on the fact that it has to be a positive engagement or something. We are kind of keeping the space open. Similarly, when you're showing them pictures for something like feelings towards nature, it's best to choose pictures or photographs that you feel the students will see in their day-to-day lives, instead of again bringing in your own personal biases and being like, okay, I don't like this particular animal, I'll not have a picture of this. So I think that is one way too, but it's obviously an area that you have to kind of tread carefully. What will also help is if you have a team where you can, present those questions to somebody else, and probably get it reviewed if you have from somebody else if you have a team of people that you're working with. I think that was something that worked for us as well, because we did have a collaborative feedback system in place where we were trying to run the questions to somebody at every point and see if it makes sense or if it's full of our own biases. And again, NEAF is not trying to say what is right, what is wrong. So you're kind of completely detaching yourself from that kind of a thinking. So I think that also helps you with keeping your biases at bay. So that's what personally I feel, but there can be other perceptions of viewing this thing too.
Tanaya, Snigdha says maybe also not asking questions that imply good or bad or judgment. Yeah, that's a very important point. Payal has a comment. I'm sorry if sounding silly, but I'm really new to this. I want to understand how I can use these assessments towards better teaching. I'm unsure about the concept. I'm new to learning about nature, but I wish to educate the kids and learn side by side myself. Any guidance on this? Payal, not a silly question. Thank you for it. It's completely fine. Could I suggest, and Tanaya, please add to this, could I suggest spending some time with the document, because the document has a fairly structured introduction section that talks about why we're doing this. Why did we even put this toolkit together or this assessment framework together, and why we did it in the space of nature education. And we're happy to also share some articles around this, including the references that are part of the document itself that Tanaya has put together. And then maybe if you want to have longer kind of discussions around it, feel free to get in touch with us. We're happy to help in any way. And just to remind everyone that if you're in Bangalore or in cities like Goa or Bombay and Chennai, there are nature educator meetups happening. It's exactly for things like this, for everyone to meet people working in the nature education space, to share ideas, to talk about challenges, to also discuss tools that are being developed, to share resources such as this. So make sure that you're connected with someone in the space that you're working in. Yeah, we will add these details on our website. And maybe the different chapters and how you can get in touch with them, we'll add it to our website too.
While you're thinking of any questions, if you have in mind, I would also like to just give a quick brief of what tomorrow's session is going to be, so we can be a little better prepared. So tomorrow we will be diving a little deeper into analysis. And I'll also be sharing some data with you for you to actually try and analyze it by yourselves. So that would be something that we'll be doing tomorrow. What would help is if you can go through the whole nature education assessment framework, at least the tools that we went through today, because it's a longer document. So maybe you can just go through the 10 tools and probably read about the analysis section from it in particularly, just so that we are better prepared for tomorrow. It might be a little more of a heavy kind of a session, but we will try to keep it as interactive as possible. We'll also look at the self-assessment component. You can read that too as well if you just want to take a look at it before tomorrow's session. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for joining in today.